Hello and welcome to another Touchy Gooners podcast. It's your boy Dan Coops on hosting duty today, and I'm joined by my good friend Sean SV Carboholic. How you doing, my man?
Yeah, good man. Good, all good. Good to see you back, bro. Paternity's been slapping you.
Yeah, for real, for real. So hopefully this is the start of many more pods. I've been doing some negotiation with my wife around the timing, this and the other, but um, hopefully this is me resuming business as usual. So it feels good to be back, man, and it feels good to be back jumping on the pod after a 6-0 win. So um, that's always welcome when Arsenal come back with resounding result. A shame we didn't get blood of our enemies this weekend, though. I think Tobe said this is like the first time in like 2 or 3 years where all of the big six won their respective games on the same weekend, which is a bit of a shock. We were very close to getting some blood from Chelsea, from United, from Spurs, but some late goals there really saved their bacon, really. But before we get into it, minor housekeeping. If you're not following us on socials, make sure you drop us a follow. We love interacting with all of you listeners. Getting the questions that we try and respond to on these podcasts. If you're listening on whatever podcast, Spotify, Apple, whatever platform you're listening on, make sure you leave that 5-star review. That really helps the pod, gets our name out there. Really helps support us, and the more support you show, the more content that we can chuck out to you guys as well. So Shell, 6-0 win. I think there was a bit of a arming and ahhing when the lineup came out, right? When we saw no ESR, no Jesus, no Tomiyasu, who I think were three guys that we were supposed to be expecting to be involved. Jorginho back to the bench as well, and there's some talk around an issue that he's been nursing in recent weeks. So, how did you feel about the lineup when that came out? Because I know people were, sort of speculating about a few kind of permutations that we might, start with, given that West Ham were going to come with their deep block. So, how did you feel about that lineup?
Yeah, I can't lie. I was a bit apprehensive. When I saw the seven names, I said, "Rah." I was feeling a bit confident going into it, but when I saw that, yeah, it made me a little apprehensive. I mean, the Jorginho stuff, I expected that. For me, that's only really a big game stuff when you're going to play a deep block. You get an extra attacker in there. So um, overall, it was still calm, but it was one of those ones where you were looking at the bench and you're thinking, right, if we need the bench today, we might be in big trouble. But as such, it wasn't necessary. Said to Lewis on the post match as well. Really and truthfully, there wasn't anything to be worried about, man. And obviously, you could tell these guys after the two defeats to West Ham earlier this season, they really wanted to get back in blood.
Mm. Yeah, for real, for real, for real. And I think Zinchenko's another name that wasn't in the squad that we could have expected to see. And yeah, I think I'm similar to you that for me it was whatever the lineup, just win. Do you know what I'm saying? It was like today and that day on Sunday, and I think for this next sort of run that we've got coming up in the league, it's literally just about points accumulation, making up for some of those silly drop points that we did earlier in the season, and really just getting 3 points after 3 points after 3 points after 3 points. So it was about getting the win and leaving without any further injuries for me. So we'll get into the actual game. For me personally, and I thought the two guys that really shone in this match were Trossard and Odegaard. So I'd like to focus in on Trossard's performance. Obviously, he gets the fourth goal, I believe, just before halftime. That's the first goal that we scored from open play in the match. But before that, he was really cooking something up, And I think we've had this discussion about Trossard quite a bit recently about sort of where he fits into this team. And when you see him, take his chance like that, I think he's up to 6 goals now in the league so far this season. He scored now 3 in 3 games since the or 3 and 4 games, I think, since the Dubai warm weather training. So he's in red hot form as well. So far. How did you feel about him popping up in central areas? Do you think that's now, where we need to deploy him?
Yeah, for me, one of my issues with Trossard has always been he's not someone who can naturally create separation. Maybe as an impact sub, like he did it well against Liverpool the other week, right? But generally, as a rule, I don't really want Trossard wide, especially against deep blocks. It's not enough for me. But we did big him up when he signed last season, and most of his appearances came as a false nine, right? So it's been a bit interesting that we stopped doing that. I thought Trossard at false nine because for the most part, right, Trossard at false nine worked. We often talk about the facilitation for we often talk about the facilitation for the wide guys. And I thought he's when we talk about more natural replacement for Jesus, he's probably the most similar. Obviously, not as aggressive and as pressing from the front, not as probably aggressive in duels and stuff, but very intelligent, right? It sort of reminded me. Do you remember back in the last season? I think we went away to Fulham, and it was similar. We just completely bought them off the park. They didn't have a kick, so it felt like there was a lot of when we knew West Ham were going to line up in a deep block, we wanted to get as many players central as possible to pull them apart, destabilize them. So I thought one of the interesting things this game was White inverted from right back. That's actually something we've never seen before. And it's also interesting considering people have said it sort of happened at Brighton. You saw it under Marco Bielsa at Leeds. So I thought that was good. Trossard at false. Now we just had an overload of central passing options. And I thought that was really, really good, man, because we sucked them in. And then we just, we went either wide to Saka or Martinelli, obviously mostly Saka this game. So it was really good. And for me, if Trossard is going to start, this should always be the position he starts in for me personally. And but yeah, and it was a really, really good performance. We've spoken about, even though I do have some issues with how he is in build-up sometimes. I say that he put a lovely ball over the top for Saka to win the penalty, but he's a very efficient finisher. I can never hold that against him. He's probably the cleanest ball striker we have at the club, off either foot as well. You can tell sometimes that he's obviously the older statesman in the attack, and you can tell that by the way he finishes because there's conviction in his finishing, which I really respect.
Yeah, off both feet as well, and I thought it's quite interesting how he was dovetailing with Havertz as well, right? In that false nine, and then Havertz giving you that false 8 that role within that team as well, right? Because I think when Trossard has started in sort of that left 8 position, you might not necessarily get what you want from him off the ball when it comes to winning the second balls, maybe defending in the midfield as part of that second bank of 4. If we're defending in that 4-4-2, and I thought the central position for him in the false 9, it probably gets the best out of him, where we're asking you to defend from the front in terms of that pressing, putting pressure on the centre backs, the full back, that kind of thing, without then necessarily having to get stuck in the middle of the park where West Ham have got some of their bigger players, their Alvarez's, their Souček's, James Ward-Prowse, etc. And I think he got to show his talents to really good effect in this match. I thought he was dropping in and almost sort of half cheating, where he's coming in deep to pick up the ball, but then he's ghosting back out again to be on the end of things. So I agree with you where I think that's probably where he looks the absolute best. And then on the flip side, someone like Havertz is probably more comfortable than him, in that nitty-gritty center of the park stuff, especially when you're talking about some of the off the ball work that he gets stuck into. So I thought Trossard took his goal very well, and generally was a contender for man of the match eventually. But we had another 2 or 3 guys that could have got that spot as well. So I do want to talk about Martin Odegaard as well here. So we do have a question from one of the listeners that I did see earlier, and this is from HA Football.
Huss, yeah, big him up, man.
Yeah, good follow there. If you guys don't follow him, that's a good account to follow. It's a good conversation. It's about being one of these rude little weirdos that you might see on the TL. But he asked, do you think Odegaard is starting to hit his peak? In the last 2.5 months, he has reached a new level, especially creatively. 10 big chances created in his last 14 games, 3+ key passes per 90, and 0.37 expected assists per 90. So those are, really, really, really good numbers. And I think if you go on the Premier League website, I'm not sure who leads this stat, but you will, I think, it's Mo Salah with big chances created, 17 for the season, right? So when you're talking about Odegaard doing this in, 10 big chances in his last 14 games when we're, sort of 23 games into the season, those are really, really, really good numbers. Really, really good numbers when you're talking about, the top echelon of creativity. So do you think he's starting to hit his peak? Because this level of form that we're seeing, I think, since he's come back after that Newcastle game is exceptional.
Yeah. For me, since November, we often speak about how things started to change after November creatively. I think probably alongside Big Gabby, I think he's been the best player in the team personally. Like I really think this guy's cooking. I thought it was an interesting point Anton made as well, and I think you've made it before. Generally, I'm much more a fan of when Odegaard's having a lot of touches. I think if Odegaard's having a lot of touches, you made this point before, I think we're onto a good thing. Earlier on in the season, we spoke about Odegaard was sort of playing on the last line. We were trying to get engineer shooting positions for him. And obviously, Odegaard's really good at shooting. So I understand. But obviously, I think Partey to Odegaard was a high passing combination last season, right? And it hasn't been so much so this season. So I think the drop of, Odegaard dropping slightly deeper. I mean, even in this game, there were times where he was picking up the ball from the centre backs, right? And he was literally just cutting lines through to like Havertz and Trossard, who would then, hit one of the wings. I thought was really, really good, man. I think he's been really like in his playmaker bag recently. Like I think one of the things that's actually upsetting me, I think he's only on like 5 league assists, which is generally criminal. He should be on minimum double that. I think back to games like Wolves at home, where Eddie Trossard missed sitters, Jesus missed sitters, Brighton at home, similar. Even against Liverpool the other week, he created for Kivior. He had another one. He created the opening goal for Havertz. Basically, he's really been putting on for the team generally, man. And I much prefer when Odegaard, like I said, he's heavily involved rather than when we want to put him on. I think him also being, and I said this to Lewis on the post match, him being sort of deeper, it also allows Saka to come inside a bit more. Like, when we speak about Saka receiving the ball wide on the touchline with chalk on his boots, it's not really one thing we want to see. Ideally, you want Saka in that Salah position, receiving the ball on the width of the penalty area where, you saw for the 5th goal, he only had one guy to beat. Do you know what I mean? Whereas normally when we're stuck against, couple people on the touchline, it becomes harder. It becomes a bit more monotonous. And I think Leroy mentioned it in the chat. We look like we've been a bit more vertical also since November, which I think was necessary as well, man. So really, really good. I can't praise him high enough, man. It's one of those things where you're like, you just don't want this to end. Like you don't want anything to scupper form. Like you just want you want to keep him like on the low cook, man. And he is really, really cooking at the moment. So yeah. And he should be on minimum 10 assists in the league alone, minimum.
Yeah, and I think as well, when you talk about him coming deeper, allowing Saka to come inside more, I think that's a really, really good point that you've made there, because I think one of the points that Gary Neville made, I don't always like his analysis, but I think this was a good point that he made when he's talking about Arsenal's front three when we weren't necessarily in the best place going forward earlier in this season, that they lacked connectivity, and I think one of the elements that we've seen over the past few weeks is, that front three being, a little bit narrower. We know Saka still receives very wide, but sometimes, Odegaard dropping deeper allows him to, not always be out on the touchline, coming in, receiving where he did against West Ham, in order to, cause that devastating damage once he's been inside the box. And before, he got his penalty, but you look at the run that he makes to win the penalty, is a very central run, out to in, very, very bad defensive line that West Ham are playing, but, it's a fantastic run. And the 2 chances he had even before we won that penalty is him, out to in, making runs into the box, to pick up chances in central areas, which is, where he can be, way more devastating, as we saw, for large spells in last season. So I think that's a really good point, is that, when Odegaard is not necessarily in that top right half space, you're taking people out of that zone to allow, Saka to really cook. So I think that's a really key point. And then as well on Odegaard is, like you said, I think there's been a few games, now where he's actually been putting stuff on a plate for these guys. I think the Brighton game, or maybe the Wolves game at home, where I'm thinking, I think I see Eddie miss a sitter. I think I see, Saka miss better sitters and all of this stuff. And I'm just like, wow, like, you, man, we need to stat pad. We actually need to stat pad, because, you look over at Man City and these, man, I think this, you said, they all start on 5 goals, 5 assists before, you just look at the stats. You see in years past, Mahrez is already on 15 goals by March or something like that. And then, you're looking at this and I'm saying, how are these lot doing it? Because when they do it, they're just racking it up 2-0, 3-0, 4-0. They just light. And I would like to think that this is something that we're starting to develop, with the Crystal Palace game and this game now, where, I think you've seen it with this Arteta team. When we're 2-0 up or 3-0 up, the game sort of dies. And we don't necessarily go for that fourth, go for that fifth, go for that sixth. And so I was quite happy that we were doing that, or it looked like we were doing that, at least up until, some of those subs came on in this game. But, another performance that I did want to mention that I thought was quite interesting from a tactical perspective was Ben White. So, I thought this was a very, very interesting tactical setup, not one that I can't remember us playing in this way before West Ham, where we see Ben White being the one to sometimes drop in to the center of the midfield and form a double pivot with Declan Rice. And, this is something that you have mentioned, Shaun, in the past, talking about how he played under Bielsa, etc. We've had this conversation in Touchy Gooners about him, potentially being like a backup number 6 if we're in a real, injury pickle. And I thought it was kind of, like when we saw it, it's one of those things that's like almost like a light bulb moment. It's like, why have we actually not done this before? Because we've seen Partey invert, we've seen Timber invert for a very brief period. Obviously, we've seen Zinchenko, we've seen Kivior, we've seen Tomiyasu. And if you look at it, of the sort of the fullback centre backs that we have, the one who seems most obvious for that inverting role is Ben White. And we know that he sometimes drops into that line of midfield to make a 3 with Zinchenko or with Partey or whoever that might be. But we never really see him come in and take that actual central role. And, I thought it was quite interesting because we still saw loads of overlaps from Ben White. But then what I thought was quite interesting is when he went into midfield, we then saw Saliba carrying the ball over quite big distances as well, So I thought that was a very, very interesting tactical layer, as German Dan likes to say. So what were your thoughts on Ben White, sort of inverting from right back?
Yeah, it's always interesting, right? You spoke about the inversion, and we always want to have someone inverting, right? Whether that's from left back or right back. You spoke early on in the season, Zinchenko wasn't available, so it was Partey doing it. We know Zinchenko is the most natural. Obviously, we saw Timber sort of do it before he went down as well. So, and to your point, it does feel weird that we've never really tried Ben White at it. He feels like pretty much a natural as well, and so I thought he was really, really good, man. And it'd be interesting to see if this was just a one-off or whether this is something we're going to look to continue, right? A bit more long-term. There were times it actually still overlapped in this game, from over Odegaard and Saka as well. So he often talks about, Ben White talks about, Arteta wants the tactical flexibility, right? You've got to be able to play like full back, centre mid, and almost like as a 10 in one. Otherwise, you don't play for him. So, but to your point, when we've used Tomiyasu and Kivior there, White looks like more of a natural fit for me. So it'll be interesting to see. It's one to watch to see if this continues, man, for sure. But he's been good, and he has been good since the Dubai winter break, man. So it looks like he was one of those who needed the rest more than anything.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I think, you know, if Timber was fit, do you reckon we would have seen this earlier as well, with him potentially inverting from right back and not just left back?
Yeah, 100%. I think Timber was really one of the key tactical pieces that was bought right. Like you said, someone like similar to Tomiyasu can play all across the back four, but very agile, knows how to drop the shoulder, good ball carrier. So it would have been really interesting to see how Arteta used that. Obviously, he started left back against Forest first game of the season, right? So and he would drop in. Well, he would drop in, but he would. I don't know, man. It's really one we can't say until unfortunately we see Timber for a stretch again, man. But I think for Arteta, it's just important to have those tactical pieces which allows him good build up, which I've always said. I think once we build up well, a lot of the other stuff naturally flows. So yeah, man, no, it's good. Really good.
And I think, you know, what is quite interesting there is that I don't know if Tomiyasu comes in at left back, and we know Arteta has inverted him at times, or if we start with a back four of, say, potentially Tommy, Gabriel, Saliba, Ben White, you could potentially choose to invert, you know, depending on the play from either side within the same match, you know, which is, you know, something we've spoken about in the group, is that, like, you know, I think at the moment we've got flexibility with certain profiles, right? So, you know, if you can play, you know, I think German Dan said, oh, we perfected the double six box midfield, right? Or you've got the double eights, and then someone inverts as well. And then you've got an ESR, you've got Havertz, you've got Odegaard, etc., playing in front of them. And I think, you know, what would be ideal in Arteta's head potentially is having someone that allows you to flip between both of those systems, rather than you having to, you know, make a sub, may have a different starting lineup. You've got that almost total football from the guys from the 11 on the pitch. Do you get what I'm saying? So, you know, Ben White might be the guy that comes in and sits next to Rice, or it might be Tomiyasu, or it might be Zinchenko. I think one of the things that makes it difficult with Zinchenko there potentially playing, if Ben White is the one inverting, is that, do you want Zinchenko to be in that back three at any point, or be, you know, the one deepest? Probably not. But I can definitely see that with Kivior. I can definitely see that with Tomiyasu. You know what I'm saying? And maybe they're not necessarily as effective inverters, but, you know, when you see us linked to certain left backs, you know, there's this Hato guy who has played left back, centre back, I think DM as well. That is something interesting. When you've got Timber, who's playing at left back, potentially he can invert and also play that left centre back role as well. So, you know, I think it is definitely an extra tactical layer that we can bring to the team if you are looking at Ben White coming into midfield. So there was a couple other performances. We've spoken on Saka a little bit as well. He leads with 2 goals, 1 penalty, I think, from some good play. I think Trossard's the one that plays the ball over the top to him as well. So he was really in his, you know, his full bag of tricks this day. You know, some great passes. But I think Declan Rice and Nicholas Jova, you know, deserve some commendation coming out of this match, right? So, you know, I think we win the first corner. I think it was Trossard's volley, right, where Martinelli went over to the other side and put a nice cross in for Trossard, who hits it on the volley, gets saved, and then we take a corner with Declan Rice. And so, you know, we've had this conversation, Sharon, and it's like, I think, what game was it? It was before Liverpool, right? I think it might have been Crystal Palace. We played them, and I think that was the first time we see Declan Rice on the corner, right? And the first thing I said is, you know, what's Rice doing on corners? You know, and then I think we scored from the first one that he took, and then I see him again, and it's sort of like, it doesn't. necessarily sit right with me. That we've got one of the tallest players, one of the best in the air, sitting on corners. But when he's putting deliveries in like he's doing, I don't think we can really complain too much, because you put that one, right on the money. Saliba's there at the back post. It looked like the easiest goal that you'll ever score, and then him and Gabriel have a conversation for the free kick. He tells him exactly where he wants to put it. He whips one in, fantastic ball. And again, easy as you like. We had about 3 guys in the line waiting to score that goal. And then icing on the cake on the day, Odegaard and Trossard sort of have a bit of a miscommunication about a pass back from Ben White. And Declan Rice says, you know what? Don't worry about it, lads. I'm whipping this one straight into the back of the net. That's a proper swaz, the way he hit that and bent it away from the keeper. So he, had a great day out. Got a bit of revenge for the fans out booing him. I think they're ridiculous, booing him for that as well, for moving and upgrading his life. Just a shambles from them, to be honest. I think it's quite disrespectful to boo, and I don't really understand it either. That's a cup-winning captain. I don't think any of the West Ham fans have seen their club win anything. So to treat him in that way is a bit beyond me. But he had a great day. So what did you make of Declan's performance?
Yeah, it was top, man. It was top, and I think after the first 2 performances, I mean, obviously he came on against West Ham in the League Cup, but in the home game he probably didn't have the best game. So yeah, and obviously the stick, and he just wanted to show out, man. He just wanted to show out, and it's still, the point you made, it still doesn't necessarily sit well with me, him taking set pieces, when I'm just like, this is a 6'2" brother who scored the winner against Man United, scored the winner against Luton. He's evidently very good in the air. Get him in the box. But at the same time, you can't argue with his delivery, right? He's had like 3 assists in his last like 5 games. So I wonder even if he might start taking free kicks from a certain side as well, man. Because his ball striking is very peak as well. And I said to Lewis on the post match, he should be looking to be, similar to a Rodri, like, because Rodri has peak ball striking as well, right? It's one of those ones that even though you're playing as the 6, you can still engineer shooting opportunities from the edge of the area. Like, think back to Partey's goal in the North London derby against Forest as well. It's like, those balls rolling at him on the edge of the area, he could pick up like 5-6 goals a season. I think he's already on 4 for us. He's got 4 goals, 4 assists, so that's a sick return. Well, I mean, not that we sort of put any sort of target on his head. We just wanted Rice to play well, right? But if he's chipping in with end products as well, I don't think we can moan about that, man. So now that was top from him. I really dread to think where we would be if he hadn't stayed fit all season. That Joker Partey, he's 6 months out, and put it this way, there's no way we can rely on Jorginho or on any. Like, we'd be sitting a lot further down the table had Rice not come and changed our lives, man. So yeah, he's real whipping excursion with his delivery. But I just think, yeah, he's been top, man. Top. More than we could imagine.
Yeah. I think that's a really poignant point, last season. So, we look at the injuries we had coming into this game. No Jesus, no Partey, no Smith Rowe, no Fabio Vieira, no Tomiyasu, no Zinchenko. So when people talk about our squad depth and whatnot, I think those 6 names, a lot of them would be in a lot of people's, starting lineups, if not, first names off the bench, right? And so if you think back to last season, if we're missing those 6 players, we'd be finished. We'd be absolutely finished. We'd be looking at Lusungu. We'd be looking at, whoever to come in and step up, Rob Holding, and all of these guys to come in. And no Timber as well, which is 7th. Guy,
and I think that's probably why, Leroy makes the point in the chat, probably why Arteta deserves credit, right? Because, last season we sort of knew what the 11 that was going to play was essentially when fit, right? He's had to change to different circumstances. To your point, obviously Partey and Timber have basically missed the whole season. ESR, Jesus been in and out with injuries, Zinchenko in and out, Vieira now, been out for like 3 months. So probably what were his initial tactical plans, he's probably had to change, adapt. So to do all that and still be 2 points off top, I think that's a sign of really, really good coaching, man. So hopefully he can continue that. And I think the most important thing now going into the stretch is that we just get everyone back. you know, for the running man especially. So I know I saw there's an international break in March, right, which I think is just a joke. Like, but you know, if we're still in with a chance of you know competing for both trophies, man, I can't be seeing any of our guys go away, man. I can't. I already said before, you know what other guys like when he comes back from internationals, man. And you know, Southgate will just flog Rice and Saka, which isn't just necessary, man. So we need to start being selfish, man. A couple of those guys need to start faking some injuries, or you know, Arteta needs to have a word or two, man, because there's no way, yeah, we can be competing for that, and these men are going away to play friendlies in March. It's a joke.
Yeah, and I think there's a really good point from Diallo in the comments, right? So he says Arteta has made us so unpredictable now. I legit don't know how we're going to shape up next weekend against Burnley, and neither will company. You know, and I think this is, you know, a really, really poignant point, because when you talk about, you know, unpredictability, I think there's several games that I could point to where we've played not necessarily completely different, you know, tactical layers and setups in terms of how we play on the ball. You know, Saka's always going to be, you know, receiving high and wide at times. You know, your our forwards always going to want to be dropping in, but there are so many different, you know, types of flexible ways we're playing. Do we press high, or do we have sitting our mid block? You know, we look at the Man United game, very, very different to how we played against Spurs. Again, then very, very different to, you know, how we played against Liverpool, you know, where, you know, we go way more direct to Havertz, win the second balls and go from there. You know, we've seen us start the season with not many, you know, fast breaks, try and be a bit more methodical when we played against Manchester City, you know, not being open, susceptible to a counter, being very deliberate and measured in how we build up to ensure, you know, we're able to block any potential counterattacks against them. That's very different to how we played against West Ham, where it's like, you know, as soon as our forwards get in the box, deliver, we're making sure we're getting numbers in there, and really committing to attacking. So, you know, I think there's different sort of, like, you know, if you've got a set of DJ decks, right, and you know, you phase one side in, you put the volume on that side up, you put the volume on the other side down. You know, we add a little synth here, and then we turn another dial here. And I think, you know, we've got that you know, underlying tactical setup that Arteta wants and what he knows he likes, but certain things he turns the volume up, you know, depending on the opposition. Certain things he turns the volume down, depending on the opposition. And I think, you know, what he's doing really needs to be commended, because, you know, a lot of the criticism we're getting earlier in this season, he's shutting people up. You know, we see the tweets now coming out about open play XG the last few games, the most in the league, least XG conceded, most XG, I think just second most XG over the whole season, just behind Liverpool, this, that, and the other. And all of this stuff, you know, slowly, all of the metrics are now starting to, you know, pile up to make you really believe that what we're doing is really special, you know. So I think Arteta does deserve a big pat on the back for the coaching that he's done. And one of the things as well is, you know, main criticism that's been leveled at him is, you know, can you do it when you don't have your ideal lineup, right? Like what we've seen in previous seasons is a few players get injured and everything falls down. You know, a few key pieces, everything falls down. And, you know, I think it's a big development from him that this season, you know, you're not necessarily having all your sharp guys, the guys that you want to play. And where are we? We're still right there, plugging away, hammering teams as well. So let's pause on the West Ham match there, and let's head into some listeners' questions, because we do have quite a few of those. So I will go to a question that was asked actually before the pod a couple of hours ago, actually. And this is from Johnny. So Johnny F on Twitter. And he says, is there room for Kieran Tierney now that White can invert? You know, which I thought was an interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think it would be a nice profile to have again. Although I just generally think Arteta was probably tired of Katie. There are too many seasons where where we talk about down the stretch, right, where there are certain players that we needed available. Like down the stretch, KT was never available. We relied on him. And I just think Arteta got tired of him, and the team sort of evolved away from him. I still think he could maybe do a role, but I just think the team's past him now, man. So we're trying to loan him to fatten up for a sell, hopefully in the summer.
Yeah, and I don't think he's not in the team because of his ability. I genuinely think Arteta just doesn't trust him in terms of keeping him fit, and also I think the sort of the break in that relationship to me came when the reports came out about him not being honest about that knee injury that he had, right? And I think from then, if you look at how Arteta spoke about him, he talked about him, like a leader there. He trains really well. He's trying to learn this, that, and the other. And I think after that, boy, he's just been out of favor. Once Arteta ain't feeling you, he really ain't feeling you. So yeah, I just think the injuries will get in the way too much when it comes to Tierney. So even if you did want to sort of rely on him, how much can you rely on him when he's out injured for half the season? I think he's played something like only 10 games for Sociedad this year because he's been injured a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I don't think he really is reliable enough for us to sort of make room and include him in any plans, right? So let's go to La Castina, Sistina Blackstenius 2024 Ballon d'Or soon. He says most pointless signings we've made since 2010. Thanks.
Oh damn.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been quite a few, I'm sure.
Dennis Suarez might be up there for sure.
Yeah, Dennis Suarez, Kim Kallstrom.
I put Cedric up there.
Cedric, who bought Sebastian Schillaci, pointless signing. Stefan Lichtsteiner, pointless signing. Boy, there's been a few, man. There's been a lot of stinky ones.
There's been a few. I think yeah, Cedric might be mine, man. That signing's pissed me off. We put him on big money as well.
Even Pablo Mari, pointless.
Yeah.
Pointless. So
yeah,
but yeah, I'll go with Cedric. We gave him a 4-year contract and he's still here, boy.
He's still here. Man's doing his coaching badges, Weird signing. So Khalil HT3, shout out him. He says Conor Mulligan had a decent performance at left centre mid, but it's noticeable still that the left side didn't bag any goals and assists in a thrashing. Is this still a problem, or is the left side functioning as intended?
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I think what was noticeable this game was that there was a lot more rotation, whereas Martinelli found himself on the right a few times. He drifted quite a few times. I think there's supposed to be a bit of synergy with Trossard and Havertz. So, for example, when Trossard drops in, Havertz goes in behind. I think essentially, even though I don't like it, I just think it's always been, still to this day, it's just more of an off the ball role. So, but I've always said with Havertz, if he's not going to contribute anything in build up, he needs to put up numbers, right? So I think he's on like 5 goals. He's hit a bit of a drought again, so he needs to start putting the ball in the back of the net, mate, to justify your inclusion. 65 mil for some defensive jewels isn't enough, mate. I'm gonna need you to be active in the final third and just play with some personality, mate.
Yeah, boy, it's when he asks the question, right? Is this a problem, or is the left side function as intended? I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I think the intention was for Havertz to really get on the end of things a bit more and actually have some more output. I think off the ball, I don't think anyone can dispute or debate that it's working, right? You look at the XG against and all this stuff. There was that video circulating about number of open play shots we faced in the past 2 games. And it's like a 10-second clip and all of this stuff, right? So I think that's working. But for me, I think, like you said, Martinelli coming over to the other side, I think it's a bit unfortunate. He didn't really get many chances in this game. I don't remember him taking too many shots in this game. But I think him coming over into more central areas more often, coming over to the right, is only going to be good to get him closer to the other attackers. More rotations, more unpredictability, making him harder to pick up will lead to more shots from him in the box. So I think we'll get much closer to what the intentions are there for him. But I think when it comes to Havertz, I do think we're expecting a bit more from him on the ball. So remains to be seen where we end up with him.
I said to Lewis the other day on the post match, it almost feels like Havertz is better in the bigger games rather than the smaller games. Like, he's more of a threat in the bigger games, maybe because there's a bit more space. He's obviously quite fast for a 6'4" guy. He can go, can go in behind, go over the top. But where we need a bit more jinky and a bit more combinations in the smaller games, he's never really massively involved in that. So yeah, I don't know. But obviously, listen, as long as we keep winning, I'll keep Stum. you won't be hearing much from me. But yeah, I would like to see more, man. But yeah.
For sure. And we've got this again from Diallo in the comments, right? So you man going to revisit the Ramsdale Raya debacle. I personally overreacted early on. Raya has elevated us massively. So yeah, I think that's a really fair point to make, because that conversation has essentially just died, to be honest, because I think Raya has basically shut down that conversation with his recent performances. I think I saw conversation on Twitter where someone said that Raya's got the most cross claims in the league so far this season, right? Which I think is probably the biggest indicator of why he was brought in, to allow us to be super aggressive. Because I think when you claim a cross, right, it gives you the opportunity to instantly turn defense into attack. So when you talk about shot suppression and all of this, if a keeper doesn't come for it, you're relying on a defender to clear it. You're given an opportunity for a striker to potentially get on the end of something. It's a bit more chaos in that area, but the keeper gets it. Everything is super calm. The centre backs know things are under control. The guy's got control of his area, his zone, allows people to relax. And also, we've seen it in recent weeks, allows you to really get yourself up the pitch very, very quickly, and we've had a couple of opportunities where we could have scored, and we actually did score from a couple of these opportunities as well, so I think that is a very noticeable point, and long may it continue for Raya to play this way, because at the start it was looking very, very spooky, yeah, I think that's a real fair point. So Connor on Twitter, he says, how much of a pay increase has Nicholas Jova earned this season?
Yeah, I can't lie, he's going brazy. Like, he's legit going brazy. 16 goals I think we've scored from set pieces, which is absolutely and ridiculously insane. I don't know what the record in the Prem is for set pieces. Surely we must be approaching it, right? Because I think 16 was, I think it was roughly around 20% of the goals we scored this season have been from set pieces. And initially, I did see it as a problem. I said to Lewis the other day, I said, I'm not sure if it's sustainable, but I think the point he made was that when you generate so much dominance and you pen teams back in, you are going to have a lot of set pieces. And so it makes sense to work on them, right? It's a string to add to your bow. So I don't think it's something that we should neglect. And obviously, something that they work extremely, extremely hard on, man. So long may it continue. It evidently is sustainable, man. So he more than anything, he's coaching his ass off with these set pieces, man. Give him a pay rise.
For sure. So Khalil HC3 had another question, and I think we covered this slightly. So it says, white inverting seemed overdue but worked very well. Is anyone a bit surprised you haven't seen it earlier? this season, and is it preferable to Zinchenko in big games due to his defensive security?
Yeah, I think it's more we just have to be prepared to your earlier point about there's just different moods for different games. I don't think we should get used to anything being set in stone, right? We spoke about Arteta making us more unpredictable, so it's good just to have loads of different options, right? Teams don't know what's going to come. To the point Diallo made, it makes it harder to plan. So I would like to see it more, but again, I'm sure there are loads of different ideas Arteta has in his head, man. So as long as it's making us effective further up the pitch, I don't really mind.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Nazir at Azir_Lee says thoughts on Kiwior at left back and continuing there. He adds even more physical presence to our back four.
I mean, we have to be honest. When Timber, Tomiyasu, Zinchenko are fit, he's going to be on the bench, right? That's the reality of what it is. But I thought he did okay. I think he started a bit maybe jittery on Sunday, but for the rest of it, he kept Kudus pretty quiet, and that was probably a concern of mine pre-game. Kudus has had quite a bit of joy against us a couple times this season already, but yeah, we really padlocked him, and the easiest way to padlock him was keeping the ball away from that zone and from that side, right? So he had nothing, man. He had nothing. So I think he's done okay. To Kiwior, the jury's still out on him, in my opinion. Obviously, I think Arteta probably helped him by telling him not to invert anymore. Playing him more as a third centre back probably suits him a lot more than inverting. So yeah, I think he's done okay, and maybe he's getting more minutes now than he did previously, right? So maybe it's just a case of comfort. He's feeling more comfortable within the setup. So yeah, let's see on that, man. I don't like if everyone's fit, he's going to be on the bench for me. But it's good for him to have minutes and show that he's a viable option.
Yeah, I think it's probably his longest run in the team since last season, right? At the end of last season, so I don't think it's that surprising to see him improve with more games. But yeah, I think it's probably not necessarily. I don't know if I want to say it's that unfair to him that he's not played as much, but I think with everyone fit, I don't think he's in anyone's lineup really. But I did like his performance against West Ham. He did, I think Kudus kind of cooked him a couple times, but then he did all right to recover. So if you want to rest Tomiyasu for another game against Burnley, even if he is fit, I wouldn't mind seeing Kiwior start that game. Maybe Tomiyasu coming on for some extra fitness, and then seeing how that goes. Because the interesting thing to me is that Tomiyasu, I don't get how he's playing 90 minutes for Japan, coming back and is injured again. Very very weird one. Very weird one for me. So but that's Tomiyasu now. That's Tomiyasu for you. So Sam E_91, he says, what would our 11 look like now if everyone was fit from the beginning of the season? Would the dynamics be wildly different, or do we look the same?
I think there would be a difference, right? Because we were always told, I think, by Arteta that Timber, Rice, and Havertz signings were all interlinked, and we only saw that for the first half against Forest on the first day of the season. So I think there was probably a different plan. You see a lot of the tacticos on Twitter talking about a 3-4-3 with Havertz just off the main striker, not being involved in build-up. Maybe that was part of the plan. Timber as a third centre back, but also inverting Partey from right back. So we don't know. But I think generally the point is right, and we've already mentioned this, that there's not one specific 11, right? And generally, again, we need to get more comfortable as a fan base for like when you look at City, right? You could say Rodri, KDB, and Haaland are the most important players. Everybody else is interchangeable within that team, right? And I think that's probably a position. We've seen City won games without KDB and Haaland for half the season, right? They were missing. But the moment Rodri got injured, that's when they collapsed, man. So I don't know if there's a set 11. It's just about having a quality 18 that we can mix and match according to game state and according to the opposition we're playing against.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. And I think if you look at it, we should hopefully get to see a bit more of what this could have looked like for the end of the season. If we get that, tactical plan for the last 10 games and it looks good, then boy, we could be in for a good time, So let's see what it looks like, as some of the other TLF members like to say. So Mr. H. Manoya Harry, he says Zinchenko, ESR, Tomiyasu, Jesus, and Partey have all shown they can't be relied on in crunch time. Is it time to move them on in summer?
Well, I think Zinchenko is basically going to be downgraded to a squad option. I think he might have done anyway had Timber been fully fit, right, and never got injured. ESR, you know me, I'm not selling my stocks, so you can call me a hypocrite. I'm still keeping that one, so hold that. Tomiyasu is essentially a squad player, right? He is a squad player anyway. He's not someone who starts. So as a squad player, I'm fine to keep him. But the injuries are a concern, and I don't like the way he seems to get a lot of leeway from fans, Tomiyasu, despite the fact he misses significant minutes every single season. But hey ho, Jesus, yeah, another one probably after this season. I think he starts getting downgraded to a squad player. And Mr. Ghana Partey, he got to go. So yeah, to the point, I think Partey will go, and the others will be essentially squad players, right?
Yeah, I agree, right? Because I think if you look at it, we already sort of signed a guy to replace Zinchenko, but he just done his ACL, on day one. Smith Rowe, I think he's a good piece to have in the squad. It's about showing fitness, and hopefully if he's back soon, he can start a few more games, show what he's about, really. But Tomiyasu and Jesus, I think they can have similar roles in the squad where they can be, big utility pieces. So, Jesus can play anywhere in the front line. Tomiyasu can play anywhere in the back line. I think these are good options to have where, the quality that they bring is quite obvious. And the hope is that, with Tomiyasu is not always the case, but when they're not playing as much, they shouldn't necessarily pick up as many injuries. So, you can really try and manage their minutes if other players are also fit, and that's a big if. And I think with Partey, it's probably enough is enough for me. Of those 5 names, I think Partey is the one that I'm just very certain I don't want here next season. Personally, I think he's probably the best player from that that list when fit, but
he's the most unreliable.
I'm just not happy with him at this stage. I don't want to see you shining your teeth, buying watches, bruv. When you ain't kicked a ball this season, man. That's just not what I'm on. Pulling your hamstring, kicking, flipping,
balloons,
gender reveal parties and stuff. Like, come on, bro. Like, this is just, it's not. I don't care if I sound like a Yadar. Yeah, I just do not care. Like this. Call me whatever names, but he's just not giving that he's a serious guy, and that's something that I don't think is good to have around when we're trying to just develop a squad of serious individuals, really. But so that actually comes on to the next question from Yonko Abs. He says, what do you think about the notion that Arteta will always struggle to cross the line for major trophies until he recruits a couple more experienced players at the very top level at their peak, like 27 to 32-year-olds? Xhaka and Jorginho's influence, even this emoji. Okay, emoji.
I'm not sure if I follow that notion. I'll be real. Like, more often than not, the reason we've struggled to cross the line in the last few seasons, right, is injuries mostly. Like, you look at that season, we were going for top 4. What happened? Partey got injured. Shock. Tierney got injured. Shock. Tomiyasu got injured. Shock. None of them are important players anymore. You see, last season, the main reason was obviously Saliba got injured and we replaced him with Rob Holding. So I don't think it's down to a lack of experience. I think there were some valid criticisms about game management and squad utilization, which I think we praised earlier in the pod, right? Because I think he's been better with that. He's not had a consistent first 11 and he's managed to adapt to that. But yeah, I'm not sure it's down to experience, right? I don't look at it and think, oh yeah. I mean, by the way, I'm not against experienced players, but I don't think that's the difference between us and. I mean, that certainly wasn't the difference between us and losing the title last season, personally.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that, and I think you get experience through your experiences, right? So this squad every year they're more experienced. The more title races they're in, the better they should become at dealing with the pressure, knowing what each game means, knowing how much energy is expended from the physical exertion, the mental exertion. They're more used to it every single year. That's what comes with experience. So I think Saka learned from last season, Odegaard learned from last season, Saliba, Gabriel, all of these men will be picking up small things, picking up little things here and there. And so, that experience can come from, just being involved. You don't win stuff until you win. You get what I'm saying? So I think, a lot of these guys will develop that experience that we're craving. Very, very soon. So AFC Joga, he says, how many world-class players do we really have?
This thing is so subjective, man. Like,
Mm,
there's so many. If you ask me, and you ask me to, I'll give you three. I think Saliba, Rice, and Saka. I would have them in for me in that. I'd have Erdegaard very close as well. Some would choose to include him because I think he's really reached a new level again. Personally, it's always subjective, man. I've been seeing all the Saka Foden stuff today. I couldn't be bothered to get involved or respond to it. Who's world class, who's not world class, the definitions of world class. People are just always shifting the goalposts all the time when it comes to this, man. So I can't be bothered. Like with Saka, they've always shifted the goalpost every time. Do you know what I mean? So from the moment he's come up, they said he was a left back, said he was getting Euros for work experience, was one of the best players there. World Cup, he was one of England's best players again. He's carried Arsenal from the mud, from 8 to 2 title challenges now. He's put up numbers for the last 3 seasons. He's on course to have his best ever season. When you talk about longevity, I don't really understand. And then the final one was Champions League. I saw Rio talking about it, but he had, the most goal contributions basically in the group stage, along with some of the others. You can only judge what he's put in front of him, but every time he's been put in front, he's delivered, in my opinion. So yeah, man. And even when he's not delivered, for me, it's more down to fatigue than anything because he gets rinsed more than any other player. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, we always speak about Foden, how he can go long periods, not being in the team, and no one will blink an eyelid. But a run of 5 games, everyone's talking madness, and it's down to. Don't get me wrong, I think Foden's a brilliant talent. Technically, he's elite. It's probably down to aesthetics bias as well, man. So, but yeah, is what it is.
Yeah, for sure. I think on the world class point, I think depending what we manage to achieve as a club, all of these accolades and all of these conversations, it will come, man. It will come. So I'm not too concerned. Not too concerned by all of these conversations because I back these guys. I back these guys to perform. I back these guys to, be able to show out when it matters, so that these conversations just really get put to bed. So M4 F79 he asked, do you think Trossard should be a full-time centre forward and Jesus be a full-time winger for the rest of the season? So I think we covered this a little bit. I think we're both more comfortable with Trossard in that false 9 rather than out wide. But on the Jesus part, I personally think he's probably more effective from the wing than he is up front. I think a lot of his best movements and best moments come from him drifting wide to central rather than him necessarily starting centrally. And I think he started as a winger, so that makes a bit more sense. So I think that's probably what we're going to see next season. Jesus used a lot more on the wings and on the flanks, but then also be a centre forward option as well. So not something I'll be mad at. Baitface Nate says Smith Rowe injured yet again, this time by the hands of the manager, which I don't think is true. By the way.
That's not true. That's not true. That didn't. That is. Nate is always coming with the controversy. That didn't happen. I think because I saw already from Charles Watts. He said, "Yes, I had a little twist, but he tried to play through the pain." He said he wanted to play this weekend, but the club just said, "No, let's not risk it in it." So yeah, allow it, man. Allow it.
His question is it time to admit he can't be a reliable option to take us forward? No.
I'm not ready to admit that yet. So no.
He's my answer. He's my answer.
You can call me deluded or a hypocrite. I don't care.
When I lose that war, I'll lose that war. But
Yeah.
I'm going down with the shit, man.
Yeah, for real. We may have lost the battle, but listen, you saw how Jon Snow won in the long term, bro. Get me? So now we're there, man. We're going north of the wall. You know, we're leading the wildlings over, bro. We're not losing, man. Trust me, at all.
For real. So last couple of questions. So AS Sohar 11. He says, I firmly believe we'll win a Premier League with Mikel as he's a top coach. However, I believe we will have to wait for Pep to leave for this to become a reality. Do you agree?
I hope not. I hope he can do it while he's here, because that will give him more kudos. And, you know, even if we were like, if we're true villains, like, and we managed to do it this season in Klopp's departure lounge and on Pep's head, like, that would really solidify everyone who's been talking smack about Arteta. Do you know what I mean? Because he would have beaten the best two coaches in the world, right, to the title. That would do so much for his PR. But I do think he'll win one anyway. When it will happen, I don't know. Hopefully this season, but it will happen, man. Definitely. He can definitely get us over the line.
I think so, and I think last season it showed it, right? Like that, you know, I know they talk about Pep, they won 14 games in a row, but ultimately it was we had it in our hands, and it was our fuck ups, you know, that meant we didn't win the league, you know. So yeah, I definitely think he can do it whilst Pep is here. You know, Klopp has done it whilst Pep is here. Conte's beaten Pep to a title. Mourinho's beaten Pep to a title in the past. So, you know, we have to believe. You know, that's all we can do as fans is believe. You know, so that's what I'm going to do personally. I am Mr. Lex. He says, "Is it time to cash in on Haaland squad members?"
Defo, Nelson, and Eddie. Defo, those two.
I agree.
Those two are pure profit. We've spoken loads about the need for a winger, the need for a striker, and those two, you know, obviously they're homegrown opportunities, but those will be pure profit on the books, man. So we should be able to raise money for the both of them, man. So and obviously it also potentially creates space for Nwaneri and Miles Lewis-Skelly in the future as well, man. So it's more a case of move on current ones, introduce some newer ones as well, man. So
yeah, I think so. And then, you know, you talk about some of the other guys on loan, Norton Cuffy, your Patinos and stuff like that.
We should be selling all of them, man.
Get some P's from them as well, right? So Alexis Kafkas asks, where do Saka and Martin Odegaard rank in your top right winger attacking midfielders in the world? If not top, who is ahead of them and what is needed to overtake those players?
So with Saka, I've always said I only have Salah above him. People can argue, people can disagree. I don't really care. Obviously, attacking midfielders is different. You know, you've got guys like KDB, but I don't think he's. You know, who else is there? Never having Bruno above him. You know, Musiala's a hooper. Don't get me wrong. Florian Wirtz is a hooper, but I don't think any of these guys have outperformed Odegaard personally, in my opinion. I think they're both young, fantastic talents, but
interesting. It's interesting that question on the attacking mid. So I agree with you on Saka. Odegaard, yeah, it's funny. Would I swap him for Musiala? I'm not sure that I would personally. I don't think I'd swap him for Wirtz. Who else would you really put in that? You know, I don't think these guys are proven world-class players either, right?
I agree.
Musiala is class. He's absolutely cold. You know, I'm thinking, you know, Bernardo Silva. Would I class him? Would I class him as like an attacking mid that I'd play there? Probably I would. I'd probably have him. It's a tough one. I think I'd probably have him ahead of Odegaard as well at this stage. But you know, I don't think there's many better than these two guys in their positions. You know, and when it comes to like in terms of swapping them for what they do for us, I'm not sure that I swap them with anyone that isn't called Kevin De Bruyne. You know,
facts.
To be honest, so yeah, it's definitely an interesting one in terms of what is needed to overtake those players. I think you just need to do. and have the impact that those players have in their respective teams. Salah's impact at Liverpool cannot be denied. He's those two are what you call inevitable players, right? Kevin De Bruyne and Mo Salah. Like when the chips are down, when the team needs something, them man are the guys, that you turn to, them who repeatedly step up in the big moments. And the small moments as well. So, I think that if you want to overtake those guys, that's what you're going to have to turn into, that those forces of nature, basically, that can't be stopped, basically. So,
facts.
Yeah. Last question from Oko James. He says, why does Trossard get less respect than Jesus? Do we need to start thinking about player roles differently than our more traditional means based on the way we play?
I think we've spoken about the second question, in terms of, squad roles and it being more of a squad game. So I agree on that. Fundamentally, though, I think Jesus at his best is better than Trossard at his best. Like, you get what I mean? When Jesus is on it, like what he generates, like obviously I know we laugh about BCM and stuff, but when Jesus is on job, like I wouldn't, there's not many, what he does for the whole front line as a whole. Obviously, we know he doesn't score enough, but the way the attack looks when Jesus is on job, I'm not sure Trossard can replicate that. Trossard's a good deputy, don't get me wrong, and we've spoken about probably needs to play false nine more again, but I wouldn't swap him for Jesus when they're both at their best.
Yeah, agreed. So we'll leave it there. Sean, thanks for joining me. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Everyone that asked questions, always appreciated. So really good questions in this week. I've enjoyed recording that pod especially. We've got a nice set of fixtures coming up, and obviously we've got Champions League ball returning next week. So, the next main TG pod will be after the Porto game and after Burnley away. So make sure you lock in for our analysis of both of those games, and we will do a post-match on the Patreon for the Burnley game straight after that as well. So if you haven't joined the Patreon and you want to, tune in some of these post-matches, we go into, the detail on each individual player's performance on the day, give them a match rating as well. Then make sure you lock in for that. And as I said at the top of the pod, make sure this is the perfect time now to give the 5-star rating, perfect time to leave a review, tell a friend to tell a friend. If they don't know about Touchline Fracas, they really do need to know about Touchline Fracas and the Touchy Gooners especially. So make sure you guys are locked in. But otherwise,
the same way you're doing propaganda for your babes on Valentine's Day, I need propaganda for the TG machine, man. Give us a plug. Give us a 5-star rating review. Help us, man. Thank you.
For real. And if you are listening on, Spotify, Apple Music, make sure you just give it a share on the Instagram story, man. Let people know this is what you're locked into. This is what you're enjoying, So all of that stuff really helps the podcast, and we appreciate it. So, you guys, thank you. Love and appreciate all the listeners, and we'll catch you after the Burnley match, and hopefully after another, 3 points in the league and a win going into the second leg against Porto. Peace.